Yo, what's up everybody? Thanks for checking out this Beastlord vid. I'm kind of going through all the different classes to give some highlights and stuff on my experiences with them in the pre-order beta. And next up here I'm on the Beastlord. So basically um, from my thoughts and playing of them a little bit, I kind of basically saw that they have some strengths and weaknesses, so I kind of wanted to go over those with you if you're considering playing them. First and foremost, looking at their stances, they're going to get that balanced stance, evasive stance, offensive stance, divine invocation, inversion, overchannel, recovery, and spellblade. So pretty interesting list overall. They're kind of a hybrid in between two different things. So the first and foremost, the highlight of the Beastlord is that they are a pet class with a pet of a Beastlord as well. So their pet is going to be able to do a lot of the same things that they're doing, which, take that for what it is. Kind of a interesting choice in my opinion, but that's what they went with, and you get really cool options with it. So each different race is going to have their own type of warder pet. That's kind of fun to look at. So the other half of that is that they got their pet specific buffs that they get, and I'll kind of go over some of that stuff with you here soon. Pretty interesting flavor to a pet class. I think it's different than like the int-based caster pets, so something to consider there. Next up, I've got the hybrid caster and DPS, so they're going to have shaman spells as well as the ability to do melee DPS. So they have, typically their equipment stuff is similar to the monk equipment, so things like hand-to-hand and clubs and stuff like that. So take that for what that is. And then the last thing I wanted to go over is their AAs that they get that are quite interesting. So that's kind of what I see. Basically in their shaman spell line, they're going to have hastes and they're going to have slows. They're not at the same strength as the shamans, but that they do get them. I think it's a strength to them. So kind of on that vein, I wanted to go over a couple of their spells that I liked and show off their AAs here really quick. So the first thing here to look at is going to be what type of slows do they get. So down here at level 50, they got this recent change basically in the pre-order. They got this, it says a 40% attack speed debuff. So not up at the level of enchanters and shamans, but the fact of the matter is 40% is great if you don't have that anywhere else in your kit. That is really going to help them out a lot. Other interesting things I see are things like their absorbing one hit buff, so that you can, send your pet in and against Shadow Knight, and maybe the Shadow Knight will death touch the pet. You know what I mean? And if you get that one hit happens to be the Shadow Knight's death touch, that's great. For me, I think the usability of that might be interesting. Like, it might be tough to actually make it hit the spell that you want, but if you see that, like, they're casting Ice Comment on your pet or something, you can hit them with that. It says the reuse is 36 seconds, so you're going to be able to do that in response to stuff. I think that's a little too micromanagey for me, but they've got it, so it's interesting. They've got a pretty strong pet heal here at the 671 health for 200 mana. It's like a 3-to-1 ratio, so it also clears some of the diseases, poisons, and curses. Not bad. Then here they've got this Spirit Salve heal up to 456 health for 181 mana. A 2-to-1 ratio is what I would call that. I mean, you can level it up. Ultimately, I feel like that's not going to be as strong as like Paladin's heals, but it is still good where they can heal. The fact it's a huge part of the game is having heals into your kit. A lot of these spells a lot of people get, so I was kind of specifically looking at stuff that they get for buffs on their pets. So I think this is pretty cool. Fills your pet with the power to do a proc. This says they do up to like 44 damage. You can level these things up and gives them more dex to proc more. I think that kind of stuff is great. They'll have things like the Spirit of the Wolf, so they can run faster, some debuffs to debuff the enemy. Pretty interesting stuff here. You know, things like Malo and stuff like that, they're going to have access to weak versions of that. You know, interesting. The shamans have a great spell list, so having a lower level shaman spells is kind of how I look at it, is good. So that's off the EQL wiki here. Next, a website that I use, this eql.navitech.xyz. I'll put a link into it at the bottom. This one, I liked the layout of this so I could look at the AAs, the information. You know, again, this is all pre-order beta stuff, so things are subject to change. There might be more stuff that they added in. I know they recently gave a lot of AAs that gave their pet a higher chance to crit, so that's interesting. But that won't be listed on here. But the ones that I did want to look at was this Frenzy of Spirit that says increases your melee attack speed by 99% and attack power by 250 points for 48 seconds. These are going to have longer cooldowns, but still having that option is nice. You know, so you can kind of do a frenzy and attack faster. So this one, the Hobble of Spirits, it's like an ability where you tell your pet to attack and snare the enemy. They have things like that for telling your pet to attack and taunt, stuff like that. So they have some, you know, pretty cool abilities for their warder. This last one is really good. I expect them to make this, you know, as the game progresses, you go into Kunark and stuff, this continues to get strong in live. People really love this Paragon of Spirit. So when activated, shares your natural attunement with all group members within a 200-foot radius, so the whole group is going to benefit from this. It increases health regen by 200 points and mana regen by 80 points for 36 seconds. So pretty nice kind of a way to sustain through a fight and stuff like that. Helps your whole group out. That's pretty powerful. I think that's a pretty cool skill that they get there. So I kind of wanted to go over those basic things that I saw on that. As far as going over some of their cons, the way I see it, and again, just kind of my opinion on things, but what I've noticed was that their double attack, they don't get it until later in the game. I think it's level 46 if I'm not mistaken. So they're, you know, with the melee hybrid, it takes a long time for them to get it. They do get it, which is nice, but I feel like if that's what you were going for, it takes a long time to get to it. As far as the slows that they do have, it takes a long time for, you know, other classes are going to have a stronger slow that'll overwrite your slow. So if you're playing with like you know, if your combo has an enchanter in it, for example, the enchanter slow is going to be stronger than the Beastlord slow. But if you're playing with a combo that doesn't have a slow at all, it's still nice to have, right? So the heals are not going to be like a main healer like a cleric or a druid or a shaman is going to get. They're going to have a bigger heal, so you're going to have to cast yours more often, which just depending on what your style is, you know, it is going to be enough to do healing. So, but it, you know, higher content, harder monsters, I don't know if it's going to be enough based on where their defenses are and stuff like that. So you're going to have to kind of weigh those pros and cons onto everything. And then with everything, I kind of like to put in whether or not they have their escape, like a feigned death and stuff. And the Beastlords do not have a way to drop fight if they're in trouble. So that's kind of like my brief overview there. One of the things I wanted to mention, you know, classes I think that they're going to combo really well with. And it's an interesting idea if you're going for a pet heavy focus. Like let's say you go Beastlord and Mage. You know, you're going to get a lot of pet inventory slots in that combination. The Mage is going to give you their AAs to boost their pet. The Beastlord's going to also give them AAs to boost their pet. I think that's an interesting setups. The other things you might want to do are add in something that gives them like the double attack line, more, you know, like a warrior or something to give them more weapon options, stuff like that. possibly even consider like a stronger healer line on there, like a cleric or something, so that you have a, you know, a beefy pet, you have big heals, it gives you plate, things like that. So those are, you know, Beastlord is an interesting pick on everything. So like most classes, all the combos are pretty viable. Other stuff that might be cool would be like a Shadow Knight or something, because that would give you the warder pet, and then you are Shadow Knight with taps or something, you know. There are lots of ways that you could play it, you know. I think it's an interesting class. The way I would see them building would be something more like a pet-focused guy, that you have like I said, the mage. I think, you know, Beastlord and a mage is interesting, maybe even like an enchanter where you charm a monster and then you use the Beastlord spells to buff your charmed monster. So anyway, that's kind of my overview on the Beastlord. I appreciate y'all checking out my videos. I'm going to have a link to the playlist that shows all of them so that you guys can get ready for live coming up in a couple of days on the 28th. So thank y'all for sticking it out to the end, and appreciate you watching the video. Have a good one.